Alright, shalom to the elect. I want to start by giving all the praises, honor, and glory to whom it rightfully belongs, which is Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachak. And what I said was all the praises, honor, and glory belongs to Yahweh, who was the Heavenly Father, in the name of his Son Yahweh Shai, who was the Messiah, in the name of the Holy Spirit, which in the Hebrew is Rachak. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, never well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect. And this lesson is pretty much going into the fact that the next eon will be better for the so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American men. All right. And, if you've been watching the videos, right, the brothers put up, you understand that eon means a period of time or age. Okay. And 2 Peter 3:13 says, and I'll get it. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. Right? And we're looking for that new rulership, which is ultimately Yahweh Shai ruling on earth, 144,000 under him. All right? So on and so forth. Right? And that which era is going to be ruled with righteousness. Okay? And the thing is, that's going to be the kingdom. All right? It's going to be the time period of the kingdom, man, and Jacob's rulership. Because as it says, real quick, I'll get here. And I'll get this one. So Revelation 21:1. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. Okay, yeah. Now the note I have here says this means a new rulership. Basically of the rulership of Yahweh Shai and the 144,000 under him. And a new earth, meaning a refreshed planet earth, a cleansed earth after the destruction. Because after this nuclear destruction, the earth is going to be cleansed, it's going to be made right. All right, it's going to be refreshed. Okay? For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away. Okay? Yeah, which is what Esau's rulership is going to be gone. This current rulership we live in, all right, which is Esau's eon, is going to be gone. Right? And then it says, and there was no more sea, meaning after the destruction there will be no more heathen rulerships ever again. Okay, so bear with me just 1 second. All right, so basically, this is what's coming, man. Okay, the new heaven and the new earth, that's what's coming. That could be a separate lesson too. A new heaven and a new earth. All right. And that's going to be in a separate eon. All right. And, the next earth age, as Elder Renata Zakba says, the 2nd Ezra chapter 6, starting at verse 7. Then answered I and said, what shall be the parting asunder of the times? Or when shall be the end of the first and the beginning of it that followeth? Meaning, when is going to be the end of the first earth age and the beginning of the next earth age? Right. That's what the prophet Esdras was asking. Verse 8. And he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. Okay? You read that story in Genesis 25th chapter, and that's one of the main stories you learn about when you first come into the truth. Jacob and Esau. And it's important, okay? Because, ultimately, we're still living in this, in Esau's rulership, but what happened, that symbolic action, well, not symbolic action, but basically it was a real action that Jacob did, but also meant something when he grabbed Esau's heel. All right, that's going to happen, and it's about to tell you what it meant though. Verse 9, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. Meaning at the end of the world, Esau would be ruling, then he'd be taken down. Then the Israelites are going to be the next ruling power in the world. Okay, so right now we're living in Esau's eon. Okay, and under Esau's eon, we under the curses, etc. Okay, we're not doing good. Our people, for the most part, are not doing good, right? And Yahweh Shai is the one that's gonna set us free from this. This is the book of Deuteronomy, 28 verses. I'm gonna jump down to verse 45. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of Yahweh thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And they, talking about the curses, shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. Okay? So these curses, they would be on our people, right, as a sign and showing that we're the Israelites. Okay? The curses apply to you, that's written in verses 16 through 68 in Deuteronomy chapter 28. You're an Israelite, basically. Okay? But the thing is, our people are still under this, and we're still living under this in Esau's aion. Okay? And his period of time to rule. Because he is in rulership, Job 9 and 24. All right? But, however, you read this, man, there's more curses than there are blessings. All right? You read this, okay, and it describes, the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians, That's who it really fully describes. But when you read Deuteronomy 28, verses 1 down to 14, that's how we're going to be living in the kingdom, That's how we're going to be living, man. We're going to be living good. We're going to be on high above all nations of the earth. Okay? See, the problems that we have now in the kingdom, it's not going to affect us, man. Another thing that affects us is this. The book of Haggai, chapter 1 and verse 6. Ye have sown much and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put it into a bag of holes. When you work, you come home, and then there's all types of bills and things like that you got to pay. And then you look back at what you have, and there's none. It's little to none, right? This is what a lot of people go through, okay? See, but in the kingdom, and the thing is, in the kingdom, we're not going to have dollars, okay? We're going to have, land, resources. We're going to have all of that. And that's real riches, Let me get this in the book of Job, right? This is the book of Job, the first chapter, and verse 3. It says, I'm going to read this in the NLT. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 teams of oxen, and 500 female donkeys. He also had many servants. He was, in fact, the richest person in that entire area. And did he have paper dollars? No. He had resources. He had land. He had all these different things. Servants, okay? So he had these things, and that's what real riches are, okay? Not money, all right? Not, paper dollars and things like that, okay? So in the kingdom, we're going to have that also, too, in the kingdom. Isaiah, we're not going to have the oppressor on us anymore, okay? But let me get this, the book of Isaiah 60 and 21, because also part of the changes is going to come, the Lord is going to change our people. We're going to be righteous forevermore. Isaiah 60 and 21, thy people also shall be all righteous. They shall inherit the land forever, the branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. So in the kingdom of heaven, all Israelites are going to be on point. We're all going to be righteous in the kingdom, because we're going to have the laws, statutes, and commandments in our inward part according to the new covenant. Okay? Because that's when it's really going to be activated in the kingdom. You see, but and that's going to be what you're not going to have Jake destroying Jake. See, that's a part of the curses, right? Deuteronomy 28 and verse 54. So that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eyes shall be evil toward his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children which he shall leave. You see what it says? His eyes should be evil toward his brother, right? See? That explains, that Jake don't get along with each other, or it's even to the point where there's gangs, things like that, right? So that's a part of it. Okay? But then see, in the kingdom, if we all going to be righteous, see, then there's not going to be any more of that. Let me jump down, verse 56. A tender and delicate woman among you which would not have ventured to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness. Her eyes shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son and toward her daughter. Yeah. So you're not going to have women, our women are not going to be wicked anymore. They're going to be on point. All right. Especially because the scriptures also say this is the book of Amos chapter 7 and verse 17. And it says, therefore thus saith Yahweh, thy wife shall be an harlot in the city. See? And that explains, that's all our women, man. Harlots. But we see you're not going to have that. That goes against the law, statutes, and commandments. You see, in the kingdom, it's going to be the complete opposite. You're going to have an actual wife in the kingdom, You're going to have a wife who's in order. Her eyes are not going to be looking for no other man except for you. Talking to the like-minded brothers, all right? You know what I mean? It's not only just for the, that's not only going to happen for the like-minded brothers in the kingdom. That's going to happen for all Israelites. We see a woman ain't going to be running around rampant, man. She's going to be in order, okay? But even furthermore, and that's just, a small aspect, and also the children, all right? The children are going to be in order as well, all right? Because if we're going to keep all the laws, Exodus chapter 20, verse 12 says this, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which Yahweh thy power giveth thee. So the law is a commandment for us to honor our father and mother, right? So in the kingdom, our children will be on point, all right? They're not going to, be disrespecting their parents. See, so we're going to have a fully functioning family in the kingdom of heaven. We're going to have a fully functioning society. We're going to get along with each other, right? We're going to have all of that in the kingdom, Even furthermore, our people is going to be a great thing to be an Israelite in that day. This is the book of Zephaniah, chapter 3. Jumping down to the bottom in verse 20. It says, at that time I will bring you again, even in the time that I gather you, for I will make you a name and a praise among all people of the earth when I turn back your captivity before your eyes, saith Yahweh. All right? So in the kingdom, it's gonna be a great thing to be an Israelite, as opposed to now, if you're so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American, right? You're gonna you basically, you look down upon, all right? You're always the butt of a joke, But see, in the kingdom, we're gonna have a good name, and it says that Ecclesiastes 7:1, a good name is better than precious ointment in the day of death than the day of one's birth. All right, and NLT, a good reputation is more valuable than costly perfume. See, so in the kingdom of heaven, we're gonna have these things. Okay, being an Israelite is gonna be a good name, and the thing is, that could just tell you, like you see Jake go to these different countries, recording themselves, interacting with the heathens and everything out there. Some of the time, when they go out there to these different countries, it's it's not really, sometimes the heathens show they hate for our people. All right, they show that. See, they show their hatred for Israelites, Hebrew Israelites. Okay, they show the hate for you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. They'll call you the N-word. They'll cuss at you. They'll try to get you out of the area that you in, run you out of there. Hey, even over here in the United States, Esau do the same thing in different various neighborhoods. You'll have Moab, Ammon, or something, or Ishmael do the same thing. Okay, our people. But in the kingdom, it's going to be a great thing to be an Israelite. That's going to be the top. Just like in this time, if you are so-called white man, you pretty much at the top, at the top of the totem pole. Right? But you so-called black man, there's a bad stigma attached to that. But see, all that's going to change, man. All of that's going to change, especially when we have the curses off of us. We're going to be the best nation on the planet Earth. I mean, we already are. We're just at the bottom right now. But see, we're gonna have to wait for Yahweh Shai to return. This is why we need this man to fall. All right. This is why we need this devil to fall, man. Ultimately, all the curses we go through is going to go on our enemies. This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30 and verse 7. And it says, "And Yahweh thy power will put all these curses upon thine enemies and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee." So all the curses we experience is going to go on our enemies. It's going to go on the so-called white man, Japanese, Chinese, Japhetic peoples, all right? Hamites, Ishmael, Elam, and they some prideful people. Elam, man. Ishmael and Elam are some prideful people, okay? And especially Amalek, even though I said Edom already, I believe, all right? But, they gonna get it, man. Amalek is gonna get it, okay? And they're not the real people, okay? They're not the real people. If they was the real people, are they in the new covenant? Why don't they have? Why don't they enforce the law, statutes, and commandments throughout the whole world, as the scripture says? So they're not the real people, all right? But in the kingdom, let me get some more. Another reason why it's going to be great for the so-called Spanish Native Americans in the kingdom. Revelation 21 and 4. "And the Most High shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away." See, so in the kingdom of heaven, ain't going to be no more death. You ain't going to have to worry about, that's the thing, Another thing, young Israelite men, young Jakes, some in the diet, before they reach the age of 20 or 21, as the saying goes, right? But see, you won't have to worry about that, right? A lot of Jake's relatives might be passing away. That's not going to happen, okay? Ain't no more sorrow, no more crying, no more pain on all levels. Jake got, certain ailments that they deal with. That's not going to happen for Jake in the kingdom, all right? All that bad stuff is going to go away, man. It's going to be the kingdom of heaven. We're going to be in our rulership and our power and authority, okay? So it's not, we're going to be living good in the kingdom, okay? Our enemies are going to be under us. We're going to have sovereignty. Do you understand what the word sovereignty means? Okay? And we're going to get the big payback. The big payback is going to feel good, man. We're going to get the big payback on all of these heathen nations. We're going to be empowered. And the thing is, we will never have to worry, but you won't have to worry about going off. You won't have to worry about that, because that's the only time when bad things happen to us is if we sin against the Lord. That's the only time bad stuff really happens to us, man. All right? Other than that, let me see if I can find a precept. This is the book of Judith, chapter 11, and verse 10. "Therefore, O Lord and governor, respect not his word, but lay it up in thine heart, for it is true. For our nation shall not be punished, neither can sword prevail against them, except they sin against their God." All right? Let me see if I can find it. I'm just going to scroll through this real fast. See if I can find it. Bear me 1 second. Damn. So, okay, let me just scroll through it again. Bear me 1 second. So, okay. believe that was the one. All right. Okay, so you know what? Believe that might have been it, but I'll read it again. Judith 11:10. Therefore, O Lord and Governor, respect not his word, but lay it up in thine heart, for it is true. For our nation shall not be punished, neither can sword prevail against them, except they sin against their God. All right. If that was the one Salakia, but basically in the book of Judith, it tells how, um, you know, basically it talks about how, if we sin against the Most High, our nation is vulnerable. But if we don't, then we're not vulnerable, basically unbeatable because the Lord is with us. We at one with our God. All right. So that's how, it works. Okay. But basically, man, all right. In the kingdom, when this new covenant is activated, we won't be, we won't be at odds with the Lord anymore. Okay. So therefore, nothing can go wrong for us. Okay. Nothing. We're going to have resources. We're going to have land. We're going to have children. Our people are going to be in order, man. All right? And Jake ain't going to have to suffer no more. So as to now, things are hard. Things are heavy for Israel. This devil makes it hard for us. This captivity is harsh. See? You got to struggle with bills. You got to struggle with discrimination. You got to struggle with even like micro, as they call, I believe, micro, pretty much, small little things, the heathens showing they hate. You got to deal with YNs. You got to deal with black women. You got to deal with all these different types of things, man. But in the kingdom, and especially really the Israelite man, because the Israelite woman, she, it's somewhat easier for her, man. All right. But basically, the Israelite man, is the one catching some hell. Is the one catching the hell, pretty much. All right. But in the kingdom, it's going to be better for him, man. The next eon. That's why we need Yahushua to come back, because he's the only one that's going to get us out of this condition. That's when things are going to change, when he comes back. So we need these things to amp up. Let me get this. 2 Ezra 7:43. But the day of doom, which is World War III, all right, when America gets destroyed, shall be the end of this time. Going to be the end of this devil's rulership. See? The end of this eon, a period of time. And the beginning of the immortality for to come, and the beginning of the kingdom of heaven. See, so we need these things to come on. We need these things to happen. We need all hell to break loose. We need a famine of the word. We need all of that to happen. Persecution, all of it. All right, so we can get to the kingdom, man. That's when life is gonna really be sweet for Israel. Okay. When the ones of our people that, put to death on this side for their wickedness, they're gonna come back in the kingdom, and they're gonna be in their right mind. See, so. This is what's coming, but the next eon is going to be great for the Israelite man. Okay? But it's going to be utter happiness. And the heathens are going to learn of our laws. So we're going to have complete control. And it's going to be great for the Israelite man. I didn't even mention the elect, but the elect is going to be good, man. The Israelite man as a whole is going to be good, but the elect is going to be hierarchy. The elect, and you're going to have the 144,000 men. Let me say it again. You're going to have the 140. You're going to have. I'm trying to make two distinctions: 144,000 men, and then the regular Israelite men. It's not on the same hierarchy, right? It's not on the same level, pretty much. The elect is going to be living sweet, man. Sweeter than sweet. All right, the elect is going to be living good in the kingdom. All right? But, because they suffering now, but, hey, they join heirs with Yahushua. Yahushua going to be living good. So, it's going to ultimately, it's going to be better for the Israelite man in the next eon. Okay? Here you got the cops, patrolling you. Right? Oppressing you, all of that. So that's what it is. But basically brighter days are coming. It's coming. Let me end it with this. Lamentations chapter 4, Verse 22, the punishment of thine iniquity is accomplished, O daughter of Zion. He will no more carry thee away into captivity. So our affliction is basically over with. This hell and trauma that we've been through is basically over with, man. Just waiting for a couple more prophecies to happen. It says, he will visit thine iniquity, O daughter of Edom. He will discover thy sins. This is what it is. All right? But I wanted to make this lesson, Lord willing, it was uplifting, because better days are definitely ahead for Israel. There's a post that's out there that says, as their world ends, ours begins, pretty much. All right? So with that, giving all the praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rechakodash, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, every well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect. Shalom to the elect.